All right, I wasn't really sure what I was gonna film today, but I definitely wanted to get a video out. So I figured there have been a handful of people asking where the Oldsmobile's been, so I figured I'd go over some of the stuff that we've been doing to that in the background. Now this car, well not even this car, just big wheel cars in general seem to be very polarizing in the car community. People have such strong opinions on them. They either really like them or they strongly, incredibly hate them, which I don't really get. It doesn't make sense to me why you would hate what someone else is doing to their car. That's so petty and so childish. Like sure, I would never put 32-inch wheels on any of my cars, but I can definitely appreciate it, and I think the car is cool. And let's be honest, it's a 75 Olds Delta 88. It's not like anybody else is really desiring these cars. So, we got the 6.0 in it, we got the Turbo 400 in it, everything's sitting in there. I did have to get traditional small block Chevy frame motor mounts. I thought I could make the Oldsmobile ones work, but I couldn't. They were just too narrow and they didn't fit the small block Chevy clamshells. But that's all together. Got the converter, transmission, everything bolted up. I do still have to run the transmission lines. Those are in the back of my truck out there still from when we initially took the car apart. Those will work perfect still. You can see I'm starting to mock up some of the wiring, trying to figure out where I want to route everything so that it looks nice. I was initially going to put the ECU on the firewall there, but with the wheel tubs being cut out, I didn't want to risk having a bunch of rocks or road water or anything like that thrown onto the computer. So I'm running it all through the firewall down here. All this is going to be neat and tidy up against the firewall and hopefully be in just one kind of cluster coming through here. And then the ECU is under the dash there. I'm going through, I had to drop the steering column to rewire the neutral safety switch. Let me show you that in a second. That's kind of an interesting story that I don't really know all the details to yet because I'm still kind of investigating, trying to figure out what they were doing. Anyway, we ended up moving the engine back about 1.5 inches. Now before, if you guys saw the videos on this thing when we first started, like when we first got it here and we're checking it out, the drive shaft sitting here at ride height was jammed into the back of the transmission, and we moved the engine and transmission back about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So we ended up cutting the drive shaft down. It still needs to get balanced, but we cut it down so that it's the proper length and everything. And it's really true, so it shouldn't need much balancing, but it does still need to get balanced. Everything pretty much clears back here. Everything's somewhat kosher. I don't know how much suspension there is still, but there is some suspension, so it's not terrible. If you guys are interested in like big wheel style suspension, there's another YouTube channel that will probably be commenting on this video, Cut It Customs, who has volunteered to do the suspension on this, but it's not my car, I can't make that call. But just thought I'd give him a quick shout out real quick, go check his channel out. I mean, the thing's like a big Hot Wheels, let's be real. If you remember, the car, when you turn the key, it would just freak out a bunch. And I think what that is relating to, I don't know if this is the exact cause yet, but part of the problem is they cut a few of the wires down here and spliced them into a relay to go to a toggle switch that goes to nothing. So I'm hoping that that's part of it, because one of the wires that they cut goes to the neutral safety switch here. And when I looked up ways to bypass it, it said to take this purple wire with the white stripe and the purple wire down there, which is one of the ones that they cut, and connect them to loop it. Now that was before I found out that they cut some of the wires and everything. I was just looking it up preemptively before tearing into it. So I'm probably going to try just putting everything back to stock and seeing if that works, because generally it's nicer to have a neutral safety switch than not. But if it doesn't work, then I'll probably just try bypassing it and hopefully it works then. But yeah, we are making pretty good progress on the car. Still have to put the fuel pump and regulator slash filter in line there. I'm going to reuse a good portion of the steel line because it's all in pretty good shape on the frame, and then connect it up to the Holley high ram up here. Then it's just, you know, electric fans. I was going to try to reuse the truck mechanical fan because I'm a huge LOL fan of those. But I think he said that he wants electric fans, and to be honest, with the high ram, it puts the throttle body right into the mechanical fan, so it's you know, it's just easier to wire up a couple mechanical or a couple electrical fans on it real quick. And one thing that's nice about doing like this is a 6.0 but a 4A5360 swap, and a lot of these older GM cars, 9 times out of 10 a truck water pump will fit. Like that 80 Camaro I swapped, I used the truck water pump and it fit fine. You can use the stock truck radiator hose and it works great. This lower one, I don't know what it's off of. I had it laying around and it fit perfect. It could be the stock truck one, to be honest. I don't actually know. This looks like the one that was on Goldie Hawn. So yeah, the only things really left for it, aside from still going through the wiring, trying to figure out some of that and clean it up a bit, because I mean, at the end of the day, he's going to want something that you can open the hood and not kind of cringe at all the wires on the firewall and everything like that. So they're not going to be hidden, but I want them to at least look kind of nice where you do see them. Get the intake on, got to put the gaskets in the intake for the ports, and then you can slap that on. Need a throttle body, need the accessory bracket with the power steering pump and the alternator. Gonna try to find an alternator where you don't need that little diode in it. And then fuel pump regulator, do the lines. That's not too bad to do. Balance the drive shaft, and the thing's pretty much ready to go. I'm not doing the exhaust on it. He said he's gonna just drop it off at some exhaust shop to do. And then, yeah, like I said, not really much left to do there. So I thought that some of you guys would be interested in seeing that, because I know that there is a good portion of the people who watch the videos who do enjoy these big wheel cars. Anyway, back to these cars. For the rest of the people that don't like the big wheel cars, we are getting some stuff for the Firebird here. I still haven't put the engine in. I still haven't taken the time to rinse out the oil pan there. And I'm still trying to decide what I want to do for a converter. Oh, I got to jack that back up soon. That drooped a lot. But we got some other things coming, and a few of them showed up. So here are the buttons that I'm going to use for the trans brake and the bump box. This is a line lock or a roll control. Those are just lug nuts for the wheels. So these are like 35 bucks, and they're called a fingertip size button. So just, I watched one of Turbo John's videos, and he has his next to his shifter, and he said what he'll do is just go like that and then just pop it off real quick. But it seems like what I've always done and what most people I see do is they'll go like that and just pull their whole hand off. Just one of those real quick. Because mine's going to be on the steering wheel regardless. So I don't know. This might work. I'll probably just do one of these real quick. And then we'll have the bump over here. Speaking of the bump. Oh, and the line lock is going to be controlled off the button on the shifter. So I was going to get a new steering wheel, but I think what I'm going to do is on the back side of these, weld on these washers, and then try to make it look nice, at least not so ratty. And then I'll drill out the holes to fit the buttons, and then that'll be nice, kind of DIY. Already got the steering wheel. Whoops. So I did have to order a new shifter because I ended up using this one in the RX-7 because this one was set up for a reverse manual 3-speed or a power glide. I ended up going with, I'll save that for when it shows up actually, because I'm kind of excited about it. I ended up getting this smooth stage bump box. The Holly can do its own bump box, but the Terminator X only has 4 inputs and outputs. I'm going to be adding a lot of things to it, like 2-step, possibly scramble button. I'm going to be adding some channels for like a fuel pressure monitoring, things like that. So I didn't want to, when I can just do it externally like this, use up a channel that could be used for something else that couldn't be independent, you know what I mean? Like, sure, it's easy to just run a manual gauge in here, but if I can run it through the Holly and actually monitor it like over a pass, then that's a much better situation than just having a physical gauge like these, which these really serve no purpose anymore aside from just filling these holes, because none of these are connected. Same with this nitrous one here. But I might end up using these in the Monte Carlo. We'll see. So with that said, I picked up this smooth stage. It was brand new in the box, still, like, all still sealed up. The guy never used it, but I got it for 200 bucks. And new, these are, I think, 300 bucks. So I was pretty pumped about that. And they are pretty simple to use. I mean, obviously you just turn the dial, and then I'll have that hooked to this button right there. Bam, bam. These ones actually, you can adjust it to where it just kind of like creeps in like a normal foot brake car, which is pretty nice. You don't have that like violent rocking back and forth. Oh yeah, got my Mac valves, forgot about that. Here's the box that the smooth stage came in. Here's the pump. And if you go back a couple videos, you'll know that the springs that I was gonna put in the engine, I thought they were BTR 660s. And once I started looking at them, I'm like, wait a second, those are dual springs, these aren't. So, and a couple people commented it because I never mentioned it in the video that BTR 660s are dual springs. So I ended up, come on Doug, cooperate. I ended up just outright buying some actual BTR 660s with the dual springs. Snazzy. I neglected to buy the retainers that these need because I didn't even think about it. And a stock retainer doesn't quite work. You need a specific retainer for them. So those should be here soon. I'll just add that onto the list. It's a good thing that I learned from the RX-7 and never claimed that the Firebird was going to be a budget build. And then while we're out here, I guess we can touch on the Monte Carlo, even though that hasn't changed pretty much at all. The Monte Carlo, oh boy. To be totally honest, I think the Monte Carlo and Jack Black are probably my two favorite. Don't let them hear me say that though. Now, if you don't remember, this is a 383 stroker that I got from Joe, who I traded the Roadmaster wagon to for this engine. And we have had it running. It sounds really good. It's real healthy. I'm estimating around 450 horsepower at the crank, give or take. I've got a manual valve body turbo 350 I'm going to stab behind it. I got a converter. Everything for the driveline is ready to go together. I just don't want to dedicate the time for that just yet when there's, you know, two others that are more urgent. Because if I had, let's see, I've got a flex plate, converter, transmission, I've got a shifter, need a cable, I've got the drive shaft, the rear end's all back together, just need to put the fluid in it. If I mounted the radiator, did the exhaust, mounted the electric fans, did the fuel system, hooked up the shifter, I think that's pretty much all it needs. So it's like maximum a week away from running and driving. And speaking of Jack Black, we'll end things off with giving an update about him because I'm sure some of you guys are curious about the dyno video that I mentioned in the last video for his 454. That video will be out hopefully in the next couple weeks. We have to take the engine back down there. We took it down there initially. I don't want to give too much away, but we took the engine down there initially, and we started testing it, and the rear main seal started leaking, and we found out that the valve springs we have were starting to float, so we got to get different valve springs, and those should be here hopefully soon. We're gonna end up putting a beefier dual spring in there so that hopefully we don't run into any valve float ever again. And Richard down there said to fit those springs on the heads we have, the seat for the valve stem seal needs to be machined just a little bit. And so since we're going to have the heads off and the oil pan off, we're also going to yank the crank out and get that all balanced because it never was. We know that all the rods and pistons are good as far as balance goes. We never pulled the crank out to get that balance, so we figured we're doing pretty much everything else as right as we can. Let's do that too, because that'll be 80 bucks, give or take. So yeah, hopefully by the end of next week, we'll have the engine and everything all back together. And then hopefully in the next week or two, we can have that video out. I will say that we were able to make one quick little power run up to about 4,500 RPM, and pleasantly surprised with the power that it was making. I know what I thought it was gonna make at like peak RPM, and that's pretty much what it was around there. So like I said, pleasantly surprised. Once we get all the bugs sorted out, the thing's gonna be a little gnarlier than we anticipated, which is always a good surprise. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. We'll see you next time.